The Kings of Genesis 14, A Clash of Kingdoms. Welcome back to Character of Kings, where we journey through the Bible to uncover the lives and legacies of rulers, good and bad. Prepare for an epic saga today as we plunge into an ancient war that reshaped the land and destiny of Abraham and his nephew, Lot. The Kings of Genesis 14, A Clash of Kingdoms. So, let's first of all tackle the question: who were these kings? Genesis chapter 14 thrusts us directly into a complex geopolitical arena, far from the familiar family tents of Abraham. Here, you'll see two formidable coalitions of kings collide, each vying for dominance in the vibrant, yet volatile, land of Canaan. Our narrative begins with Genesis chapter 14, verses 1 to 2, introducing the key players in this epic struggle. At this time Amraphel king of Shinar, Arioch king of Elasa, Kedorlaomer king of Elam and Tidal king of Goyim went to war against Bera king of Sodom, Bersha king of Gomorrah, Shernab king of Admah, Shemeber king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is, Zor. On one side stood the imposing Eastern coalition, rulers from distant lands, often seen as descendants of Shem, Noah's son. At its head was the formidable Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, a powerful kingdom in what is now Iran. He clearly was the overlord, the chief architect of this military expedition. Alongside him was Amraphel, king of Shinar, a land intimately connected to the powerful city of Babylon. Then there was Arioch, king of Elasa, another significant Mesopotamian ruler. And finally, Tidal, king of Goyim, a name that simply means nations, likely representing a confederation of various groups under his command. Opposing them were the local Canaanite kings, rulers of the flourishing city-states in the fertile plain of the Dead Sea Valley, descendants of Ham, Noah's son, the notorious Bera, king of Sodom, a city whose name would become synonymous with wickedness. Bersha, king of Gomorrah, another city sharing Sodom's dark reputation. Shernab, king of Admah. Shemeber, king of Zeboim. And finally, the unnamed king of Bela, later known as Zor. These Canaanite kings had long chafed under the heavy hand of Kedorlaomer's dominion, paying tribute for years. But enough was enough. The time for rebellion had clearly come for them. Amidst this grand conflict, the chapter introduces another king, standing in stark contrast to these power-hungry monarchs: Melchizedek, king of Salem. Often identified with ancient Jerusalem, he was not only a king, but uniquely described as a priest of God Most High, a figure of profound spiritual authority, who would later point to a much greater king. The second aspect of our exploration of these kings is to see, what does the Bible say about them? What was the war and what was its aftermath? The conflict didn't erupt overnight, you see. It had simmered for over a decade under the yoke of foreign rule. Genesis chapter 14, verses 3 to 4 set the scene for the rebellion. All these latter kings joined forces in the Valley of Siddim, that is, the Dead Sea Valley. For 12 years they had served Kedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. True to his nature as an overlord, Kedorlaomer would not tolerate defiance. He and his powerful coalition embarked on a sweeping punitive campaign. They first cut a swathe through other regions, crushing various groups like the Rephates, Zuzites, Emites, and Horites, clearly demonstrating their overwhelming might, before finally descending upon the rebellious Canaanite kings. Let's look at Genesis chapter 14, verses 8 to 10, which dramatically describes the climax of their battle in the Valley of Siddim. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is, Zor, marched out and drew up their battle lines in the Valley of Siddim against Kedorlaomer king of Elam, Tidal king of Goyim, Amraphel king of Shinar, and Arioch king of Elasa. 4 kings against 5. Now the Valley of Siddim was full of slime pits, and when the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some of them fell into the pits and the rest fled to the hills. Imagine the chaos. The slime pits mentioned here were natural bitumen, or tar pits, essentially ancient oil fields. This geographical detail turned the Valley of Siddim into a treacherous and fatal battlefield for the fleeing Canaanite kings, transforming their desperate route into a deadly trap. Kedorlaomer's coalition emerged utterly victorious. They plundered the defeated cities, seizing all their goods and provisions. And in a chilling turn of events, they took Lot, Abraham's nephew, captive from Sodom, sweeping him into the spoils of war. This capture of Lot ignited a dramatic intervention by Abraham. Upon hearing the news, he didn't hesitate. He gathered his 318 trained men, household servants, pursued Kedorlaomer's seemingly invincible force, and launched a daring night attack. The surprising raid shattered the victorious army, and Abraham routed them, rescuing Lot and recovering all the captured goods. Genesis chapter 14, verses 14 to 16 narrates Abraham's decisive victory. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. During the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions, together with the women and other people. Following this extraordinary feat, Abraham encounters Melchizedek, who brings him bread and wine, and blesses him in the name of God Most High. This encounter highlights the stark contrast between the earthly power of conquerors like Kedorlaomer and the divine, spiritual authority represented by Melchizedek. So, were these kings morally good and faithful in serving Jehovah or not? When we examine these kings through a Judeo-Christian lens, you'll find their moral compass often points away from righteousness. First, Kedorlaomer and his allies. They are driven by imperial ambition, seeking to maintain control and extract tribute through force. Their actions, while common for kings of their era, are fundamentally about worldly dominance, not about serving God. Next, the rebellious kings of Canaan. While their rebellion might stem from a desire for freedom, the cities they ruled, especially Sodom and Gomorrah, are explicitly condemned throughout Scripture for their deep-seated wickedness, indicating a profoundly immoral society. And then, in stark contrast, there's Melchizedek. He stands out as uniquely righteous and faithful. He is a priest-king who openly acknowledges and serves God Most High, blessing Abraham and receiving a tithe, foreshadowing a divine order. And finally, what valuable lessons can we learn from the king's reign? The dramatic story of the kings in Genesis chapter 14 and their clash offers some truly profound and timeless lessons for you today. First, let's consider the transience of earthly power. Kedorlaomer, despite his vast empire and initial victory, found his dominance broken by a seemingly insignificant force led by Abraham. This powerfully reminds us that even the greatest earthly powers are temporary and can be humbled by divine intervention or unexpected resistance. Next, we see God's active protection of his people. Abraham, relying on God's strength rather than overwhelming numbers, achieved an astonishing victory. This illustrates God's unwavering protection of those who trust in him, safeguarding his promises and his chosen lineage, even in the midst of global conflicts. Then, there's the nature of true authority. Melchizedek's unique appearance highlights a different kind of authority, one that stems from God and is rooted in righteousness and peace, rather than conquest and subjugation. It sets a powerful precedent for God's ultimate kingdom. We also learn about the consequences of conflict. The war itself, with its plunder, captivity, and human cost, underscores the devastating effects of unbridled ambition and the constant struggle between competing earthly powers. And finally, divine intervention in human affairs. God is not a passive observer. He intervened directly through Abraham's victory to protect his family and ensure the lineage of the covenant, demonstrating his active involvement in human affairs and his ultimate control over the rise and fall of nations. The clash of these kings reveals a world of competing powers, but it also powerfully underscores the enduring strength of faith and the ultimate sovereignty of God. This story sets the stage for the ongoing tension between worldly kingdoms and God's kingdom throughout the rest of the Bible. As we wrap up our look at this truly ancient conflict, we'd love to hear from you. What surprised you most about the motivations or outcomes of these kings in Genesis 14? And how do you see God's sovereignty playing out in such human conflicts, even today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Join us next time on Character of Kings, as we explore another fascinating monarch from the book of Genesis. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss an episode.